So we finally have a working air compressor again. Too many short trips to the store for one thing. All the wiring is done. I don't have a cover for it, so that's just how it sits. I'm going to tuck it up against the wall like that. That's why these are here. And that's why you can see the gauge right there. It does. I've been looking for leaks. I haven't really found any. This copper pipe looks unnecessary, but it serves two functions. On the old air compressor tank, this top plate was longer, so it went further out that way and that way, which meant these two components right here sat further apart, so you could get away with just doing a 90 from the compressor down straight into the cooler into the tank. But because these sit closer, it was very difficult for me to I tried just doing a straight 90 and it wouldn't seal and the tube kinked. And then the next one I tried to go out just a little bit and wrap around, but again the tube kinked because my bend was too tight. So all I did, well, you can see what I did. We go out, we loop around a little bit, and we come back. And you know, it was much easier for me to make by hand because this stuff likes to kink really easy. I mean, you can see it's starting to kink there. Right there, it's starting to kink, and this was all very gradient bends, as you can tell. This was not one big bend with a die. This was a bunch of little bends all the way around. Same thing with this bend, a bunch of little bends. But the only thing that was difficult was really the tube. The rest was just getting parts. And the second function that this tube serves is it's kind of a heat sink. Like on those cold days, this extra surface area will help it shed heat because this motor really doesn't get super hot. This motor is pretty well ventilated. But I'm thinking of having some sort of fan running as well. Just a separate electric fan. I could figure out a way to run it, like get a double pulley instead and have it come up and make a bracket for a fan, but that's just, I just feel like I should just get an electric fan that has independent control so that the fan can run when the compressor isn't and keep it cool. But I'm thinking of having a fan blowing this way over the cooling fins and over this copper pipe to help keep things cool. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The tank drain, I changed it. The old tank had a water spigot on the side of a house, and this is a petcock out of a radiator. So it's still there, and it doesn't sit down so far. I don't kick it when I go by and stuff, so that's nice. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. And if we want to in the future, well, not if we want to, when I have a sandblaster in the future, we can tap off right here. We can get a nice 1/2 inch line, 5/8, whatever is required, and we can run it straight off the tank because everything else is, this is quarter pipe right here, and this goes to 3/8 couplers, and then this pipe, it's a 3/8 line, but it's got quarter pipe adapters, and it wasn't really worth it for me to size up everything to 3/8 to match the tube because the bung in the tank is quarter. So for air tools and air chucks, filling tires, 3/8 line with 1/4 inch ends is fine. But for sandblasting and painting, I'm gonna want to go right off the side right here with a 1/2 inch, which I can do. And the belt. The belt was another pain in the butt. I went through a couple, but I had to just buy a belt and cut it and measure it and figure out what I had to go. So this thing takes a 40-inch belt. And what I had were automotive belts, but I managed to actually go and find a general purpose V-belt. And it did rub a little bit. As you can see, what happened was this motor was, I only had 2 bolts tightened just to test it, and the motor slipped and it spun and it slipped on the belt, and it was starting to slip gradually and gradually. This was slowing down, this was not. So it slipped and it wore the belts a little bit, but it's an $8-9 belt, and now I know exactly what I need. And this pulley, the box did say it took type A. It did take type A and B V-belts. So it can take a 5/8, but it is just as happy with a 1/2 inch like this one. So yeah, that's another project done. We're gonna leave it on the pallet, and I think we're gonna stick it back there where the tires are. We'll move the tires over there. And then that line down there runs up the side up to my workbench, which I have half the wood for. You guys will like it. It's gonna be about the same height as my toolbox, 3 feet deep, or just over 3 feet deep, and then from here to the wall is 10 feet, so it's gonna cover this whole area. And I'm just gonna have a hutch, so actually like a box shelf, so I can put stuff on top of that as well. So I'll have 2 shelves on top, because I really have to, with my minimal floor space, I have to maximize my vertical storage, and I really should start using that more often. But I have I've got just over 700 square feet in the shop, and I'm not giving up my relaxation corner. That is the man cave part of the garage. So yeah, it's gonna be good. I just gotta pick up the 2x6s and 4x4s, and it'll be good. But this air compressor was really a thing that had to be done, and in between work and stuff, I've been getting it done. Thank goodness. The truck is next. Parts are on the way for the rear end and the front end and all the leaf springs. So we can get the leaf springs hung, we can get the rear end under here and weld the perches on. And yeah, once we get a rolling chassis, I'm gonna pick up another set of the those wheel dollies that I have on the Mustang. You can get them from Harbor Freight. They're like $50 for a pair, but you get a coupon, which makes them $40 a pair. So really worth it. They are cheap, but they're not bad. You just have to make sure you spray WD-40 on the axles, otherwise the wheels will not roll. I learned that the hard way. And from taking 2 people to push it to me pushing it by myself with a little WD-40. So we get those, and then we can move around the frame easier. And these are rated for 1,500 pounds. I believe these are the big ones. Yeah, they are 1,500 pounds. So that means I'd be able to put pretty much anything I own on it. Because I don't own anything that's over 6,000 pounds, I don't think. I don't think even this truck, when I'm done, if it was a diesel, it might be around 6,000 pounds. But I know my F100 is close to 4,000 pounds with me in it. Granted, we're gonna have 4-wheel drive and much bigger rear end, but the tranny and the engine is all staying, and the body is identical, and there's no holes punched out of this frame, so it could weigh a bit more. I'm also gonna have to figure out what I want to do with that old 80 frame when I'm done with it. I don't know if I'm gonna sell it as a rolling chassis for someone with the Ford 9-inch and the twin I-beam suspension. I don't know if I'll do that. I don't know if I'll take the 9-inch and keep it, because I plan on, when I do that 302, I'd like to have a 9-inch to go with it. So I might keep the 9-inch and we'll stick it in like a Falcon wagon someday. But if I part it out, then it's going to be harder to sell. That's just a frame probably. But that frame isn't super desirable anyways. Because the 80 to 82 Fords are not super restored trucks. Like, they're the last classic Fords people consider, but they're not like the early 70s, 60s, or 40s. So it's like, plus it's the frame's weaker. So unless you're doing like an all original restoration for 1980 F100, it's not really gonna be desirable for anybody. So I think the frame is probably just gonna get scrapped, which is sad because it's a good straight frame. It'd be good for like a muscle truck, except for the fact that it's a long wheelbase. That's the only thing that would make it not good for a muscle truck. But I mean, it's just, the frames are straight and they're solid. It's just, they get a little rusty and you put a little too much weight in the back and they crumple. And it's not something I'm interested in having. So for not hauling for a show truck, it would be perfect. For a muscle truck, it would be sort of ideal, but not really. But for a practical truck, it'd be worthless, which is, again, why I'm getting rid of it. So, just have to figure out what I'm going to do with that. I got to get the Triumph running. Finally got all the parts for that. Needed new ignition coils because the old one's cracked. Also just a lot of shop stuff. I'm out of acetylene for my torch. A lot of cleaning to do. More organizing. Got to build that bench. I got another motorcycle I'm building for someone. I got a 68 Honda, which is why I need the bench up so I can get the motor down here and take it apart. And that'll be a fun series to do on YouTube. But yeah, I gotta get this back together. Upgrading the electronics, new coils, new coil wires. Gotta do an oil change. It's currently leaking oil. The points ignition. The ignition in general, if you have electronic or points, it's behind this plate right here, which is running off the exhaust camshaft, and that seal is leaking. So it's actually leaking motor oil into the points and causing a misfire, which is bad. And this motor will need a rebuild eventually. It likes to leak oil. See all this oil in the motor? It likes to leak out of the end of the rocker right there. So you have to this motor will have to be rebuilt within a couple of years, but we just want to get it running for now until we get the Honda up and running, which is far and away, I think, a fantastic bike. Better engineered, more reliable because it's Japanese. The side pipes are real sexy, but it's not a Triumph Bonneville. Despite all the headaches this bike gives, it's a classic Triumph, and there's nothing like it. It's temperamental, and it's finicky, and it's annoying to work on, but it sounds so good when you're on it. When it runs, the few times it runs, it sounds awesome. So yeah, it's pretty much all, and I gotta get this bike done too. Gotta get low gear, but the compressor is done. One thing is done, so I'm gonna clean up this huge mess, and I think we'll go to the tavern after we get this cleaned up. I think I've earned it. So till the next one.